My name is Rowan Vale, and for the last 5 years, I've paid for everything my family needed, without hesitation. Rent, tuition, utilities, even spa days I didn't know about. I believed in the unshakable duty of family. I believed that love meant sacrifice, that being the strong one was my role. That belief died the night my sister accidentally called me. It was close to midnight. I was hunched over my laptop, neck stiff, spreadsheet glowing in the dark. The kind of quiet you only get in a one-bedroom apartment in Boston when the whole city is asleep and you're still working. My phone lit up. Delilah. I smiled despite the exhaustion. She usually called for advice on her thesis or to plan weekend brunch. But when I answered, I didn't hear her voice greeting me. I heard a party, laughter, music, glasses clinking, and then my name, followed by a sentence I'll never forget. Can you believe Rowan still thinks she's helping us? She's basically an ATM with a pulse. My mother laughed. So did my brother Jude. Delilah's voice, so sweet when she asked for help, was sharp and mocking now. That was the moment everything changed, and this is the story of how I stopped being their provider and started becoming someone else entirely. Someone they never thought I could be. The harsh white light of my laptop bled across my small dining table as I leaned in, massaging the bridge of my nose. It was nearly midnight. My eyes were dry and grainy from staring too long at spreadsheets that refused to balance. Another late night spent working through someone else's mess. Another evening, I told myself that the sacrifices were worth it, because family comes first. Because that's what good daughters do. I lived modestly, not because I had to, but because I chose to. My job paid well, senior analyst at one of Boston's mid-tier investment firms, but my salary didn't go toward designer clothes or weekend getaways. It went into rent for a house I didn't live in, car repairs I didn't drive, and surprise expenses I never questioned. When my phone buzzed and Delilah's name lit up, I welcomed the break. I figured she was calling to vent about grad school deadlines or needed advice on her thesis again. Even exhausted, I softened when I saw her name. I always did. "Hey," I answered, voice warm. "Everything okay?" But instead of her voice, I heard music. Laughter, clinking glasses. It sounded like a party. I frowned. "Delilah?" No answer. I pulled the phone back, still connected. Maybe a pocket dial. I was just about to hang up when I heard it. "Can you believe Rowan still thinks she's helping us?" It was her voice. Clear, crisp, unmistakable. "She's basically an ATM with a pulse." The words sliced through me. I froze, the phone still pressed to my ear. A moment later, my mother's laughter followed. That brittle sound I'd always mistaken for affection. "She owes us," Mom said, her tone confident, dismissive. "No husband, no kids. What else has she got going on?" Then Jude. "Yeah. I mean, if she's not paying for stuff, what's the point?" Laughter erupted again, and I sat there, in the dark, gripping my phone like it was the only thing keeping me from drowning. My mouth went dry, my hands trembled. "I bet we could get her to cover the extra $250 for rent," Delilah said. "She'll fold. She always does," Mom added casually. Delilah again. "Oh, and I need to book that facial next week. She can handle the spa bill, too." The betrayal wasn't just shocking. It was surgical, cold, calculated. I felt like I was watching the floor fall away beneath me. 5 years of sacrifice. 5 years of living like a ghost so they could be comfortable. Rent, paid. Tuition, covered. Unexpected bills, always met without complaint. I'd canceled a vacation to Maine to cover Jude's last-minute tuition shortfall. I delayed a root canal twice because Delilah needed emergency car repairs. I'd taken on bartending shifts on weekends because Mom said she was drowning in medical debt. And this is what they thought of me. I was nothing but a wallet with a heartbeat. I ended the call, barely aware I'd done it. My apartment was still, my breathing shallow, my face wet, and I didn't remember crying. I sat in that silence, staring at the glow of the laptop. Not at the numbers anymore, but at what I'd never calculated, the cost of being needed. My hand moved slowly, deliberately. I clicked away from the Henderson portfolio and opened a new spreadsheet, exitstrategy.xlsx. It stared back at me, daring me to be someone new. I wasn't ready yet, but something had shifted. The woman who always folded had just stood up. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up tracing back every memory that suddenly looked different in the new light. Every favor, every request, every emergency now had a shadow behind it, one I couldn't unsee. I replayed that call again in my head, word for word, not to punish myself, but to remember. By sunrise, I wasn't crying anymore. I was planning. For the next 3 hours, I didn't move from my chair. My laptop screen transformed from a tool for client portfolios into a crime scene map. Each cell, each formula became evidence. The numbers I'd poured into family accounts out of love now looked like confessions of how thoroughly I had abandoned myself. I began with rent. The 3-bedroom house where Mom, Delilah, and Jude lived. I'd been paying $1,450 a month for 5 years. That alone totaled $87,000. And that wasn't even the beginning. I opened my online banking app and sorted every transfer marked with their names. $300 for Delilah's textbooks, $600 for Mom's medical tests, $150 here, $800 there. At first, I had to scroll slowly. But once I built momentum, the numbers flowed like a dam had burst. Emergency flights, prescription copays, surprise tuition gaps, phone bills, gas, spa packages masked as physical therapy. All of it tracked. By the time the sun filtered through my blinds, my spreadsheet had 4 columns: date, recipient, amount, lie. It was the lie column that hurt most. And just as I finished entering a transfer for a car repair Delilah had cried over 6 months earlier, a memory flashed. She'd called sobbing that day, said she needed her car to get to campus, or she'd flunk. I wired the money instantly. But now I remembered something else. 2 days later, she posted a photo on Instagram, her by a resort pool, cocktail in hand, under the caption, "Weekend Reset." I had liked that photo. I had commented with a heart emoji. Now I stared at the image again with cold clarity. That cocktail was paid with my dental fund. I scrolled further. Celeste's profile showed fresh hair highlights, captioned, "New look, new chapter," posted 3 days after I transferred $600 for lab tests. The salon logo in the background was one I couldn't afford to step into. Jude was easier to decode. His spending was brazen. A photo from Vegas, arms around a woman I didn't recognize, tagged at the Bellagio, dated the exact weekend he claimed he couldn't call because he was buried in the library cramming. My jaw clenched. I knew now they hadn't just been careless. They'd been strategic. Each request lined up almost perfectly with my work bonus schedule. Year-end distributions, quarterly incentive periods, raises, every single one followed by a crisis. For 5 years, they'd timed their emergencies with my achievements. I sat back in my chair. My apartment, once a sanctuary, felt unfamiliar, like I'd been living in it on borrowed time. I heard Eleanor's voice in my head. "You're allowed to say no." She'd been the only person in my life who ever said that to me without strings. We'd met at a workshop for women in finance and clicked instantly. A few weeks earlier, she invited me to a quiet cafe across from my office. That day, over a half-finished salad and lukewarm tea, I confessed. Everything. "I've been paying their rent since Mom claimed she couldn't work after her back injury," I said. "I live in a shoebox so they can stay in a 3-bedroom house. I haven't had a real vacation since 2017. Eleanor didn't gasp or pity me. She leaned in and said, "Rowan, that's not generosity. That's exploitation." The word hit like a slap. Sharp, honest. Exactly what I needed. Back in my apartment, I opened another tab and typed into a search bar, "How to freeze your credit." The process took less than 10 minutes. I set up bank alerts, changed passwords, and updated authentication. My phone buzzed with verification codes like warning bells. Then I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I looked at my own retirement fund. I'd stopped checking because the guilt of contributing to myself felt selfish. The number on the screen made me wince. I could have bought a small condo by now. Instead, I had a record of $87,000 gone, most of it without so much as a thank you card. I walked into my tiny kitchen and made tea. The ritual calmed me. Kettle, mug, tea bag, sugar, stir. As I stood at the window, watching people rush to work, a phrase looped in my mind like a broken record. She always folds. They had said that, casually, cruelly, repeatedly. They thought they knew me. And for a long time, they were right. But they hadn't met the version of me that kept receipts. The day of the dinner arrived cloaked in a deceptive normalcy. I spent the morning pacing my apartment, the spreadsheet open on my laptop like a weapon waiting to be drawn. My evidence folder, thick with bank statements, screenshots, and transcripts, sat zipped in my tote bag beside me. I wasn't nervous. I was rehearsed. I chose my outfit carefully. Faded jeans, a worn gray sweater with a small hole near the wrist and scuffed flats, clothes I'd kept tucked in the back of my closet. The illusion of struggle. Delilah once told me, half joking, that I always looked too polished to be broke. Today, I dressed for their expectations. The only indulgence I allowed myself was the chocolate cake cooling on my counter. Homemade, from scratch. The same one they always asked for, never truly complimented, but devoured all the same. It felt symbolic to bring it one last time. When I pulled up in front of their 3-bedroom colonial, a familiar bitterness settled in my chest. The mortgage I paid wasn't in my name. The porch Dad once dreamed of was now just another piece of real estate I funded but didn't own. As I approached, the front door opened. Delilah bounded out first, perfectly manicured, her perfume trailing behind her like a silk ribbon. "Ro, you made it!" she squealed, arms wrapping around me. I hugged her back, noting the smooth leather of her designer purse pressing into my side. The same purse she once called a knockoff in a late-night text, when I asked why it looked just like the $450 one I'd seen at Nordstrom. Inside, Celeste was waiting with open arms. "There's my responsible girl," she cooed. Responsible, not loved, not welcomed, just useful. Jude emerged last, offering a limp half-hug. "Hey, sis!" We moved into the living room, the air thick with fake warmth. New art adorned the walls. A sleek 65-inch TV blinked silently in the corner. I recognized the model. It had been released only a month ago. Jude had texted me 2 weeks earlier, claiming he couldn't afford textbooks. "Wow," I said, gesturing to the TV. "Nice upgrade." "Oh, that old thing?" Celeste laughed. "Black Friday deal, practically free." Black Friday was 4 months ago. They offered me coffee. Lemon squares. Delilah's eyes darted nervously toward Jude. Celeste cleared her throat, setting down her mug. "We've had some unexpected news," she began, her voice dropping to that familiar dramatic tone. "The landlord raised the rent, another $250 a month. It's devastating." Delilah chimed in with practiced panic. "I've picked up extra hours at the research center, but it's barely helping." Jude followed on cue. "I'm thinking of taking another delivery job, but it'll mess with my class schedule." Their faces turned toward me in unison, choreographed like dancers who'd rehearsed for weeks. "That's terrible," I replied evenly. "Didn't you go to that spa last month, Mom? The one in the Berkshires?" A flicker of panic crossed her face before she recovered. "Church group special, practically free." I turned to Delilah. "And that purse? Did the market downtown start selling designer now?" "This?" She lifted it half an inch. "Just a really good dupe." I nodded slowly, then looked at Jude. "Vegas looked fun." He froze. "Crashed with a friend, barely spent a dime." I watched them squirm, then regroup. Celeste pressed forward. "We were hoping, just for a little help, just until we get back on our feet." I let the silence hang. Their smiles wavered. "Of course," I finally said. "Family comes first, right?" The relief in the room was immediate. Celeste reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're an angel, Rowan. I don't know what we'd do without you." When they moved to the kitchen to prep dinner, I wandered to the hallway table. A stack of mail sat untouched. Right on top, bold black letters read, Notice of rent increase. $50, not $250. I snapped a photo. Bathroom, I called casually. But I turned into Celeste's bedroom. On her nightstand, a bank statement lay open. I photographed the highlighted spa charges. Back at the dining table, I reached into my bag and tapped my phone. A soft chime indicated the voice memo recorder had begun. Celeste returned with a roast. "To family," she said, raising her glass. "To family," we echoed. And I smiled, knowing the final act was about to begin. 1 year. That's how long it's been since I sat at that dining table, raising a glass to people who never once toasted me in return. 1 year since I walked away, not with a dramatic exit, not with screaming or slammed doors, but with a single line: there will be no more support of any kind. I remember the sound of my voice. It didn't shake. When I replay that night in my memory, it doesn't feel like vengeance. It feels like surgery, necessary, precise. A clean removal of rot I had lived with for too long. They didn't see it coming, not when I pulled out my phone and played back their words from that accidental call. Their laughter, their scorn, their plans to milk me for more. Not when I placed the bank statements down in front of them and pointed at the total, $87,452. Not when I laid out the photos, Vegas, the spa, the purse, the TV. Jude sputtered. Delilah turned pale. Celeste tried tears. She even reached for my hand. I didn't flinch. I said my piece, laid the key to the house on the table, and walked out. Their voices chased me down the hallway, bargaining, blaming, shaming, but none of it stuck. Because I wasn't theirs anymore. Now I live in a quiet apartment filled with things that belong to me, and only me. Real silverware. A wine rack I built myself. A yellow couch I chose because it made me smile, not because it was on sale. The kitchen smells like fresh rosemary. Eleanor's helping me cook tonight, she insisted. She's arranging tulips in a wide glass vase on the counter. Yellow ones again. I never knew I liked yellow until I saw how it made this space feel like sunlight. My phone buzzes with a message from Michael, my coworker in accounting. He's downstairs with wine and probably some outrageous legal story he can't wait to tell. He's become a regular fixture at these little dinner parties. So is Marcus from the community center. And Lydia, my mentor, who never lets me forget how far I've come. There's laughter in this home now, the kind that isn't hiding a favor or bracing for an ask. And there's peace. God, there's peace. After dinner, Samantha, one of the junior analysts at work, pulls me aside in the hallway. She's got that quiet panic in her eyes I recognize too well. "I started that spreadsheet you suggested," she says in a whisper. "I'm paying my mom's credit cards. My brother hasn't held a job in years. I thought I was just helping." I nod. I remember that rationalization. That lie we tell ourselves to keep bleeding gracefully. "There should be 3 columns," I tell her gently. What you give, what it costs you, and what you save for yourself. Her eyes widen, and something shifts in her posture, just like it once did in mine. After everyone leaves, I sit on the balcony. Boston glows in the distance, golden and soft. The city I used to ignore, seen only through the windows of an office or from behind the wheel on my way to deliver money or favors. Now it feels like mine again. My phone, on silent, lights up with a blocked email notification. Delilah, again. I don't read it. I don't need to. I already know what it says. 3 weeks ago, an envelope arrived in the mail. My mother's handwriting. Still unopened. It's tucked under a magnet on the fridge next to travel photos from Maine, Tuscany, and Banff. Places I finally visited. Not because I had time, but because I made time. I no longer measure my worth by what I give away. I still help people, but now I choose who. I choose when. And most importantly, I choose myself too. That envelope can wait, maybe forever. I pour myself a glass of wine and open my journal. The cover's worn now. Daily use will do that. On the first page, scribbled in my own handwriting, is a quote from my therapist. "Boundaries aren't walls, they're filters. You decide what passes through." Tonight, I write something new beneath it. It took me 39 years to realize I was not selfish for wanting peace. I was starving for it. The world outside hums softly as I close the book. Inside, everything is still, and I've never felt more full. It's strange how silence can feel like music when you've lived in noise for too long. A year ago, my life was a collection of spreadsheets and sacrifices. I measured success by how much I could give, how quietly I could endure. Back then, love meant obligation. Now, it means choice. I've learned that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's defined by respect, by people who show up without asking for anything but your time. People who laugh with you, not at you, who celebrate your boundaries instead of punishing you for them. Walking away didn't make me heartless. It made me whole. I didn't slam doors. I didn't scream. I just stopped showing up to a performance that had been cast without my consent. And in doing so, I found a version of myself I didn't know existed. The one who says no without guilt, who gives without draining, who smiles without fear of the bill that's coming after. They called me an ATM with a pulse. They were wrong. I'm a woman with a purpose. And I've just begun.